Welcome, everybody, to Creators Corner, where we go behind the meeple to meet the people behind your favorite games and the art and all that great stuff that we see here in the land of board games. And I'm excited because today I am joined by Nathan Thornton and Danielle Deley. And I just butchered after all that. I always laugh when that happens, folks. But, I'm happy that you, Danielle, and Nathan are here. I'm so excited to have you. We connected over Twitter first. Let me say, Nathan, I know I connected you initially on Twitter, just about the fact that you got a game out there, and it was your first game, so a little bit newer into the space from the development side. But your story is what interests me. And before we get to that story, everyone has an origin story. So I would like to start. I'll start with you, Nathan, and then we'll go over to Danielle. What's your origin in board games? What's the thing that got you interested in board games, or that experience that made you a board game fan?
Oh, thanks. I thought for sure you would do Danielle first. So I was going
to. No, I'm glad you're doing Nathan first. Let it go.
Well, truthfully, like everybody, I played games when I was a kid, the Trivial Pursuit game of life and stuff. But what got me into like interesting new board games was my friend's son was turning 10 years old. And so I went to the snobby board game, or to the snobby toy store, and I was looking at their board games, and so many interesting games that I'd never heard of were for ages 10 and up. And I was like, oh, my friend's son is finally old enough to play these. And so I bought him Ticket to Ride, $50, don't worry about it. And so so I gave him that for his birthday, and we played it. And it's kind of the first time I ever knew there was this whole other world. Like, I'd never played Catan. I didn't do that stuff in college. It was really buying that gift for my friend's son when he turned 10. And so later, when my own kids were turning 10, I forced board games on them. The first Christmas where I got board games for my kids, we got King of Tokyo, we got the DC Comics deck building game, we got Flashpoint Fire Rescue, and Escape the Curse of the Temple. And since then we've just been playing tons of games, and I started playing games with my friends. I started playing games with Danielle, and I've been loving it ever since.
What about you, Danielle? Where did your story start?
I would agree with probably Nathan's origin story, where you just play those classics when you're growing up. But I would say that Nathan is the one that got me into more niche and more hobby games. We used to work together, and he would put together like a game lunch. You could just bring your lunch in, play some board games. He'd introduce new ones. He's always very good at explaining rules. And that's like, you don't want to, I was never the person that was like, yeah, let me read this rule book and go through everything. He's that guy. Like, if you get a complicated game, he's the one that's like, let me break it down for you. Because he's a teacher, and he also, is a great creative person. He understands, how to break it down for you in a very simple way. And always just makes it fun. But he also was my go-to for wedding gifts. I said, Nathan, give me a bunch of wedding gift board game ideas so I could put on my registry. And so that's where I, got to play a couple other nuanced games. But yeah, it's been Nathan.
Wait a second. Hang on, Chris. I didn't know this was the time we were supposed to say how much we like our friends.
We appreciate each other.
Which we do. And I will say that Danielle is one of the most fun people to play board games with of all time. We used to, back when we worked together, we used to travel together a lot too, to different small college towns all over the place. And I would always bring games, and we would have such a blast staying up and playing 2-player games together, which we continue to do when we go to conventions and stuff.
Yeah.
So yeah, she's the best.
We try.
I love to see, again, very often I talk to folks who, a duo or a trio of people who are doing work together, but it's always so fun when they're both chatting at the same time, because you get to see that. And it's just, it's fun to see kind of the joy that you both find in the games. And I talk about that coming together, though, to do a game, because that's a whole different thing. It's one thing. I play games with my buddies. I could tell you, even very often after these streams end, I'm going to have to play a game on Board Game Arena with someone or something like that, just to end the evening. How did you come together to decide to do a game? I mean, and just for folks who know, the game that you have designed is Medium, as Board Game Geek reads, mind meld with a partner to find the word that connects 2 word cards. That's the basic description of a game. That's the Board Game Geek, kind of subtitle. How'd that happen? Where did it all come from?
Okay. I mean, I feel like Nathan, you could do the story part, but I do want to say that I think, you were talking about how we work together or how do we come to working together. Is we were forced. We both worked at the same company. So, I mean, at the beginning we were forced to work together. I would be assigned on Nathan's team and, I was the more visual person. Nathan's the writer, but Nathan also has a visual eye. I do not have a writer's mind at all. But I think we complemented each other very well, where he's very good at coming up with ideas. I sort of sprinkle in some stuff. He says, Danielle, it's dumb. No, I'm kidding. He never says that. He says, we massage that thing together, and then we sort of come up with something that is a more baked idea or creative approach to something. And so we used to play this game at work. It's an old improv game. We used to call it Say What I Say, or what was the other title we had?
We used to call it What Were You Thinking? Or sometimes we would just call it the 3-2 game, the 3-2-1 game.
3-2-1 game, yeah. And I'll end my part of the story with, I got a text from Nathan when I was at a wedding. And it was this pretty long text, and he pretty much said, why, sorry, to backtrack for a second, I would always say, Nathan, why aren't you making your own board games? And he's like, there's too much math involved in board games, and I don't know if I could ever do that. So anyways, I got this text from him, and it was basically like, why don't we turn this improv game into an actual board game? So I'll pass it to you.
No, that was it. I mean, it was like, what if that was the game? Because we always talked about it, and that's literally what we always said, because neither one of us are great at math or any of that probability and all of the systems that you need to know for board games. But we always enjoyed playing that improv game. We're like, what if that was the game? And the thing about Danielle that's really great is if there's an idea, there's nobody better at running with it than her. I'll throw out what if it was this? What if it was this? She's like, oh yeah, I see what I can do with that. I can take it this direction. I can take it this direction. And that was one of the most fun parts of that process, was taking something, because I think that's one thing that we do with all of our games. We only have the one that's published, but we have some more in the works, is taking things that are already fun to do in and of themselves, things that are fun to do with your friends. And how do you take that and put it in a box? How do you take that experience of, waiting for the movie to start with your friends and joking and laughing, or just killing time at work with someone that you're friends with? How do you turn that into something that you can package and give to other people? And that's kind of how a medium got its start. We took a thing that we love to do, on planes or, in airports or whatever, or at work. And how did we make that into something that other people could do by holding it in their hands?
You also designed something that I would describe as, I've just, on a few episodes I've talked about this, but you've made a game that's very accessible. It's easy to pick up. You can get people into it. And yes, again, you classified it under the party category, but that's not a bad thing. That's a great thing for those who want a great social experience, right? And what you've designed is a game that has, first and foremost, let me point out, because I love looking at these statistics and where do games shine, right? And actually on Board Game Geek, you're in the top 100 on the parties category, which is not a small feat to be in. The Board Game Geek, I always like to say, it's a very picky crowd. Mm-hmm. So to fall under that, pretty impressive. Talk about the process then for me of converting this from something that you did into something that you're actually going to get out and then actually get published. Because that's a whole, that's a whole different process of actually creating something, going through and following with your initiative. And that's where a lot of people, I think, fail.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, I don't know if I've ever really sat and reflected that much about how hard it is to do, to get something published. Because I feel like we're always moving on to the next thing. I think Nathan does a really good job at reflecting, and he does that through writing. When you text me, you do a lot of reflecting, and Nathan, I think, and I might be putting words into your mouth, but, it was, I'd say, was it 2 years before it got published, Nathan?
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, because I mean, we were going to go the Kickstarter route. That was our first thought. Like once we got it into a workable thing, we were looking at factories, and we were looking at distribution and shipping, like that sort of thing. So that's kind of where we were at first. Once we kind of had it figured out, because it was always going to be like words on cards. Because I think that was the thing. Danielle, I'll let you get back to your part of it in a second.
No.
But like that was the thing that I think turned it from an improv exercise into a game, because the improv exercise is just like, hey, think of a word, and you'd say 3, 2, 1, and I would say river, and Danielle would say chair, and then we would try to figure out how to connect those words, which was fine. But I think what made Medium more of a game than an improv exercise was just having 6 words in front of you, 6 words to choose from. And so if I have a card that says river on it and I play it in front of Danielle, she looks at the cards in her hand and thinks, what card can I play next to river that's going to pull out this idea, or this one word that we can match on. So that's kind of like, I mean, I don't know. It took longer to get there than I'd like to admit, but that's kind of what that development process was. But we were always going to do Kickstarter until one day we didn't. Continue, Danielle.
Sorry. No, you're good. I think another. Okay, it took 2 years to make the game. It took probably. I mean, now I'm reflecting. I'm like, how long did this take? I really don't remember, but it took a long time to sort of figure out what the words are going to be, what the art was going to start to look like, figuring out like, okay, where do we get cards printed? Or like, do we buy sleeves? Do we cut cards out and put them in sleeves and then play test those? And how long does play testing take? And it's like, once you start to, when you eat a cake, and you've never baked a cake before, you really need to then look at the ingredients and say, oh, it's eggs, it's flour. It's like all those things. And you're like, oh, I need all this stuff to actually make the cake. Or, it's a terrible analogy, but you get what I'm saying.
No, keep going with the cake thing.
Now I wouldn't mind some cake.
Yeah, right.
Who doesn't like cake?
So like, you have to do all this research, and that takes some time. And, we made a video, we made a website, we made a blog, we tried to make all these things because we were trying to build an audience. And Nathan and I are in the design world, and you're working with clients every day, and all you want is that audience. You want people to keep coming back to you because of the thing that you make. And what we were trying to do is build that audience up so that if we did do a Kickstarter, we at least had some people that would fund it. And so we were going down that route, and I think it was I'm so sorry. Origins 2017?
18, I think.
Okay, so it's...
Yeah.
All right, so we started the game... Okay, yeah, because it turned to 2017. Yes. It was Origins 2018, and we were doing the Unpub events. And I highly recommend, if anybody's out there trying to create a game, to do these Unpub events. Hopefully now that if they're starting back up, I'm really not sure. But it's a great community where you can just meet people that have unpublished games too. You're playtesting their games, they're playtesting your games, you're getting creative feedback. It's just like a good place to start and build your community of other board gamers. And so at Origins, we went to the Unpub room, and this is when we met publishers. Oh my gosh, I just forgot. I just remembered. The other thing that we did, what was the thing we paid $5 for?
Oh, Cardboard Edison. That was
Cardboard
another huge
Edison.
thing.
That's the other piece of advice. Okay, we paid $5. That's it, to submit Medium to Cardboard Edison. And we got $5 feedback from great reviewers. But this is when...
Danielle, let me pause real quick. If people don't know, so Cardboard Edison is a great resource for designers. So it's a website. They have a newsletter. They have like a list of publishers and stuff. But they do a contest every year for unpublished games, and you submit. I think you just have to submit a sell sheet and a video, and they bring in really great designers. I remember T.C. Petty III was one of our evaluators, and some other people definitely that you would know.
Chris Kirkman.
Chris Kirkman. And so like you get, and like Danielle's saying, so they announce winners, and Medium actually was not a winner, but just getting it in front of those, industry types was enough to get the game on people's radars. And I think get us even closer to publishing, even though we weren't not even a finalist, but
that's but there's huge feedback that comes from both what you just talked about. Pubs, I will note, has been mentioned multiple times on the show, and just people having used that, but I don't think what you just mentioned has come up all that often, or if ever. So but both of what you're talking about is feedback and hearing, hey, what works, what's not working. But when you mentioned some names that people are going to know, and I'm sure that they can give some incredible feedback, having gone through an experience of their own game, regardless of the type of game. They've been through the rigors or whatever you want to call that experience of trying to get a game published, which as could tell from his conversation, it's not something that just happens overnight. It takes time.
Well, I think the thing that we got from sorry, Danielle, I'll be like 30 seconds. One of the things that process kind of helped us think about, because we always just thought about Medium as a game, which it is. And the only thing we thought about is it fun? But like, starting to talk to the those reviewers and the different folks, we started to think about it as a product, and whether that's good or bad, but like that was a big shift for us, is thinking about how it's going to look on a shelf, and like if people are going to understand what it is from the name, and like and like how many cards should be in it, and like everything that made it not that made it a fun game, but made it a viable product. And I think that was a track that our minds weren't necessarily on until we started to hear that feedback.
Yeah. And I think, Nathan, I'm going to say this, and I know, Nathan, I feel like you think I'm putting you on a pedestal here, but it's true. You should. He texted me and said, we were talking about something else, but I was saying how this thing I put, I entered into, it was a long shot of getting in. And he wrote back and said, it's proof that making stuff is the most important thing. But the second most important thing is putting stuff out there and getting it in front of people. There's no such thing as a long shot, only a shot. Which I think is so important, because I think a lot of people have stuff in their minds and they want to do it, or they get it down on paper, and something stops them from getting something made, or maybe they got a bad feedback from somebody, or maybe they can't from like trying to put that thing out there. But if they work hard and try their best and at least get it in front of at least one person, that one person will have experienced the thing that you made. And I think that's just, I can cry thinking about how like great that is.
I think about with what you're saying, Danielle, I think about something that comes to my mind, which is sometimes it's not always about, you're not always going to have you may not have the million people buy the game. You may have the 1,000 people buy the game.
Right.
But if 1,000 people enjoy what you made, and it is a product, and I think that's critical we're talking about, because I don't know that I've talked about in that concept before, but it is a product. You have to go beyond the thinking of it a game, but you have to think about this has to be viable and be worthy of sitting on a shelf somewhere, because if it's not, it doesn't matter how good of a game I think it is. It's not going to be seen by anyone. So that's the challenge I found a lot of people struggle with. It's like, how do I kind of make sure this is a good enough product, but still keeps the crux of what it is? You've done it in the sense of, obviously this game is out there. People are playing it. People are talking about it. It's got, strong ratings. So congratulations in the success that you've had. How do you continue to work together though? Because you've talked about this. You said, you're not done. This is not it, right? You continue to go and continue to think to what's next. So how do you continue to work together, as a next step? Okay, Medium's out there. What's next? And have that conversation. You've found the success. What was that next conversation like? And where are you both kind of looking to go in terms of the board game industry with future games?
Yeah. Chris, can I just finish the last question real quick? Because I feel like I stopped and took a different trajectory. But
that's
anyways,
fine.
We went to the Unpub Room. That's where we met Chris Kirkman again. And he, was enjoying us playing the game. A lot of people were enjoying the game. Chris then took us aside and said, would you be interested in Greater Than Games publishing this game? So that's how we got introduced to Greater Than. And the rest is history. We got with them, and they published the game, within the next year. after
Yeah,
that.
and Danielle got sidetracked because, and I think you can probably tell, we get so excited about just the idea of making stuff. And Danielle's an inspiration to me because she, in addition to board game design, which she's amazing at, she's also a fine artist. And that thing that she was just talking about was her putting her art out into the world. And then she does that so fearlessly, I think, just, when she said like, this thing is a long shot. And I feel like she takes long shots all the time. Because like there's no way that because one thing we always talk about is the world does not already care about anything that you have to do. Like your job is to make people pay attention to what it is that you make, and she does a great job of that, and I think we do a pretty good job of that together.
Well,
thank you, Chris. And we're gonna get to your question. So how do we work so well together? I think we take the time out. We take the time to make sure that we're talking to each other weekly. We take the time to make sure we're texting each other about stuff. Everybody's just as busy as the other person. So I think we work well together because we put effort into the thing. And I think we're good at, we made a board game based off of improv, and the board, improv's number one rule is yes and I think that we do a good job at not shutting each other's ideas down. And if it's a bad idea, we can laugh about it later on. But like, we just try to keep a good balance of creativity and fun,
One idea that I had was a game that would come with socks, like actual socks, and you would get a character, and you would have to act out the character with the sock on your hand. It would come with a sock. It would come with googly eyes. It was going to be called Shock Puppets, and it was a ridiculous idea. And Danielle made art for it. Danielle made
we still got it.
Yep, we didn't get to like the rule book stage, but we got far enough that like I would say if you were like, hey, tell us about the games you've designed, I would put Shock Puppets on that list. It will never see the light of day. But we went with it.
Yeah. But part of it, I love what you talk about improv. I did theater before I went into marketing, more of a marketing media approach professionally. But college, I did theater for like 2 years, and I did theater for obviously many, many years before that. So improv, as you're talking about just kind of those rules of improv, I think back and I think about these things and these ability, even speaking to medium, that ability to connect and come to that point where you say, oh no, we got the word. That is a valuable skill set for anyone to have. So, I mean, put it beyond a party game, put it even beyond a game. It's a tool to develop a skill. If you actually look at it from that perspective. And that's another way I look at it. So I love the fact that you're I think it's not ironic actually, but I think it's there for a reason. You're a good team, clearly from what you're discussing, and you work well together, and you made a game where people have to really truly be a good team. So it's in sync with the conversation as far as I'm concerned. So it's neat to hear it. And I love the way I will say, I do love how you came together, which is sometimes fate has a way of bringing people together to do something. And here you both are. So I am thrilled to be hearing the story. But what is it? You again, so you make this connection, you got, Gritterland Games again, you get involved, you take the shot. What's the next shot that you want to take? What's the next thing kind of that you're working towards? It's not going to be socks, it sounds like.
I wouldn't count out the socks, honestly. I mean, everybody uses them. Everyone cares about them. Everyone talks about them nonstop. No, but we can tell you, and this is and I think this is an exclusive announcement that we could make here. I mean, I've heard of Tabletop Express, but Tabletop Exclusive? Wait, that's the name of it, right? So we do have, and we have a number of things, of games that are in the works, and just like anybody else, we are we're pitching games, we're throwing games out there. We actually, the fun fact,
we're getting declined, we're getting accepted.
Yeah, I was going to say we just got a rejection last night, but it was a thoughtful and helpful rejection. I mean, they made the case that our game that they thought was enjoyable but was not right for their audience, and we totally can agree with that. So that made us stronger. And I will say, before we get to the announcement of our new game, is I would say even just pitching to to publishers has been such a growth process for us. We have gotten, I mean, obviously, like having a published game has helped get our foot in the door and get us to get pitch sessions with other publishers. But like some of the rejections that we've got have been so smart and useful and have helped us make our games better, whether that is coming up with a theme that is going to resonate with more people, or whether it is understanding, like the limitations of the language, or just of the production, or this has too many dice, or anything like that. I feel like that we have learned so much just by having those conversations with people. And even though, a lot of those game pitches are going to end in, this is not the right fit for us, it does help us become better game designers. And so like everything that we've done has just has helped us appreciate it and become more confident in our own abilities. So
yeah.
That being said, so we do have, yes, go ahead. Daniel,
No, Nathan, please go. I just wanted to say exclusive.
Okay, this is an exclusive. Do you have like the graphic that you put up where you say Creators Corner exclusive?
It's the first time this is a 6-month channel. We'll take it. We'll take it the archaic way. There's no graphic,
Okay.
Have some good fun. I will say before you do it, actually, not to hold it any longer, but I want to say that I think that feedback is something, though, as we mentioned earlier, feedback is a thing, obviously, but the industry actually giving it. I don't know if that's unique because I don't do pitches in every industry, but it does sound like that. It is something that happens in the board game industry, that people very often are giving that constructive criticism back that is actually helpful, which in other industries, I don't know, but it always occurs in that way. So it's cool to hear that they are giving you that feedback and that it's useful, and that you keep that positive attitude, because I think that's the thing people should keep in mind, that you do have to accept that you might get rejections, and that's okay. That's part of the process.
Yeah, and I think, Chris, we could honestly, after Nathan gives the exclusive, I feel like we could chat about the board game community a little bit, because I think we have a lot to say about that if we wanted to.
Yeah, certainly.
Take
certainly,
us somewhere.
but we've teased. Nathan's teased it long enough, and then I didn't help. So I love it. Nathan, let's hear what you guys got coming. I'm excited to learn.
So this will be a release at Gen Con 2022. It is coming from AEG, who is a publisher who from Smash Up and Istanbul and Santa Monica and many other great games.
Tiny Towns,
Space,
on your face.
Tiny Towns, yeah. and coming in August of 2022. That Old Wallpaper is the name of our new game. It is a fun, lightweight, I would say, tile laying game with kind of a fun drafting mechanism. The way it works, so the theme of the game is that you and your friends and family are trying to remember what that old wallpaper looked like in that house we used to have. So you are trying to reconstruct what this wallpaper looked like in this house, your grandma's house or whatever it might be, or your own house when you were kids. And the way it works, it's a tile laying game. It might be cards, but maybe it's tiles. I mean, again, art hasn't been done. Nothing's been finalized. We just signed this in February. But the way it works is you'll have a number of stacks of tiles, like 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you'll have some bidding chips that'll say 1, 2, 3, and 4. And what'll happen is everybody at once will choose one of those 3, 4 piles they want to take from. They'll put their bidding chip out and then reveal. But the twist is you can only take the tile that you bid for if you are the only person who chose that one. So certain ones might be more appealing. I mean, some of them have wilds on them, so you will be accumulating tiles by trying to choose the stack that you think no one else is going to want. So it was actually inspired by one of the mini games from. I'm not a big video game guy, but it was inspired by one of the mini games from Mario Party.
I was wondering if that's where you were going.
Yeah,
because my family plays all the Nintendo stuff. I'm like, you start saying inspired. I'm like, Mario Party?
It's exactly like Mario Party. It's the one where like there's stairs and you can pick either 1, 3, or 5, and you hold up your sign. And if you're the only person who chose 5, you'll go up 5 steps. If you're the only person who chose 1, you'll go up 1 step. Yeah, and that was the thing. So we like that idea, but we didn't like the fact that if Chris and I both picked, threes, neither one of us get anything, and only Danielle gets something. So that's frustrating. So even if you in that old wallpaper, even if Chris and I both pick a stack 3, we get like a consolation prize. So like the main tiles have 4 symbols on them that you're trying to arrange into your wallpaper, and then the other ones, which are called hazy memory tiles, just have 1 shape on them. So you can still get something every time.
That's always one of my frustrations with those when that happens. So I like that mechanic. Like my family plays, like, for example, Go Nuts for Donuts, and when like we just can't get, when you get nothing and it's a turn over and over getting nothing, after a while you just kind of want to throw something.
Yeah, totally.
Politely, I can say that we're usually playing it at dinner, so we're not I'm trying to not do that. But I like that additional mechanic, and I think it's I don't know, but I've heard I don't know, but I've heard the theme with trying to remember wallpaper for, so that is definitely one that is different. But I have a very vivid memory of having wallpaper, I will say, on my wall of it was like Italy was on this back wall of this house we owned. So I do think people have a very historic prospect of maybe remembering some bad wallpaper in their house.
Yeah.
So I can imagine that hitting home with some folks. How did the idea come in? And you talked a little bit how the idea comes into fruition, but talk about that pitch, if you don't mind, a little bit. Was that one that happened more naturally? Was that going through like an official pitch process? How did you kind of make that a reality?
That I'll go into. Nathan has been the pitch guy. Here's how we work together. Nathan finds who we're going to pitch the board games to, emails them. I make the pitch decks. He also like writes them out. Then I design the pitch decks out. And then AEG got back to us, said, we'd love to hear some pitches from you. We strategically figure out which games in our arsenal we want to pitch to them that we think is going to fit well with their company. Get a meeting on the books. This was, I think, a week before I gave birth.
Yeah, it was like late January, early February.
Late January. I was pregnant with my babe. We pitched to John Zinzer at AEG, and amazing human being. Just
good.
Talk about someone who's super positive. Like he's awesome. He heard our pitches. He was very just right off the bat. Here's what I want to. We're not interested in this one. We want to get a play test of this one, and we want to think about this one. He was pretty quick about that, right? I mean, it was not even 2 weeks later that we play tested it.
Yep.
And that was the day I was giving birth. So Nathan took that over. Mm-hmm. And I guess, Nathan, you can share your experience with that part because I wasn't there.
Totally. Well, no, we put it up on Tabletop Simulator, and they set a date for us to play it with them and a couple of their developers. And we were on board, and Danielle was like, that's pretty close to my due date, but I'll do what I can. And we ended up playing it with them, or I did, and Danielle couldn't because she was at the hospital having a baby. So on the day that Danielle was having a baby is when I played it with them. So I played it with them. I think they played like 8 games with different designers that day. But about 45 minutes after I was done playing it with them on Tabletop Simulator, they emailed us and said, we loved it. We had a great time with it. We would love to sign this game. And I was like, what do I do? Danielle's kind of been, because Danielle had texted me that morning and said, I had the baby. Here's a picture. Earlier the day, it wasn't morning, was it?
Yeah, it was morning.
Okay, sorry. And I'm like, so do I bother Danielle, who's having like one of the biggest days of her life? And I'm like, hey Danielle, I hope you're not checking your text, but if you are, and I told her the story, and so she got back to me later and was excited. But I like to say Danielle had 2 babies that day.
Yeah.
You had a board game was born that day, and I will say congratulations too, of course, belated, because I remember even arranging this, Nathan saying, "Oh, Danielle's going to be having the baby soon, so we got to wait till." I said that's fine. Let's get it done.
Thanks, Chris.
I wanted both of you to be able to be here, so I appreciate both of your time tonight, and I want to respect your time tonight. But you mentioned it, Danielle, so I want to make sure we talk about it.
Yeah,
let's talk about the board game community, because so much happens in the board game community. I mean, when it comes down to it, I know sometimes there can be drama, there can be all these things, but there's so much positive that is out there with some incredible people. What has your experience been with this community? What have you kind of, felt from this community? And, you mentioned it, so I'm sure you've got some thoughts on just how important these people are.
Yeah, I think like a couple words that come to mind is like, one is it's super loyal. I mean, I remember when we were making Medium and we were going through the process of, do we have to copyright this thing? And I think Nathan researched and sort of found out like the fact that the board game community monitors the board game community. If you're going to make a game that's like something else, they're going to tell you. I mean, that there is no getting around the knowledge of board gamers. Because the board gamers don't, they don't just know about board games. They know about a lot of they're hobbyists. They know a lot about a lot of things. So like loyalty is really big with the board game community. And I think that's like super important because they're taking care of each other. And that is huge. But the other word that comes to mind, I think, is, I coming into it, you can kind of see that it's male heavy. And I don't know if I would ever say that as like a woman coming into it that I felt nervous about that. I feel like everybody I met was so warm and welcoming and just like, oh, have you talked to this person? Oh, have you talked to this person? Oh, you need to meet this person. This person knows what you should do here, or can we meet for coffee? And we'll walk through my experience of publishing a board game or something. It's just always been so unbelievably welcoming that it's great. I don't know, Nathan. I don't know if you want to add.
I'd love to add.
Oh, sure.
On something that you said though is there are over the course of this, it is true something you said. It's very easy to, as you're having the conversation, be introduced to someone. You can't not acknowledge it, who's not maybe a white male, right? Like very often you're running into a white male. But then there are just some incredible women in the space that I particularly saw a few months back, where just the industry just was making sure to highlight every woman, who had maybe designed a game or something. They were focused on it, making sure they got the info out there. And I see it, and I hope it's growing with the work of people such as yourself. So it is always great to me when I see more and more women in the industry. In particular, I'm a father to a son and a daughter, and I would love it if my daughter loves board games as much as I do one day.
So when my daughter did, but she,
I got a 3-year-old, right? So I don't know what's going to be. She's very stubborn. So.
And you know what? And I think, on that topic, I think we should definitely mention Elizabeth Hargrave. We've never, designer of Wingspan, Mary Posa's, Tussie Mussie was her other game, but we've never met her. But she's always been a big supporter of ours on Twitter and online. And she's got a database of women in board games, whether they are designers or artists or developers or publishers or whatever. But she reached out to us and included Danielle in her database as well. But she's a really great champion of women in board games as well.
Actually, I should drop a link to that in this video description. I'm going to set a reminder for myself to do that because what you just mentioned is one of the things that was on my mind. And I was wondering, that was actually one. I'm glad you're on that list because that was it's a long list. And I love saying that it was a very long list and some incredible people. And very often I think designers don't get all the credit for the stuff that they do. So, please continue, Danielle, though, because I know you were.
No, I was, I'm just, and I don't know if everybody's experience has been like mine, but I think that, just the ability to, we reached out to so many local community board game things, and they were always welcoming to us, whether they were a more private one or whether they were more open. They just had no problem reaching back out and having us join their group for the day just to bring Medium and toss it around to some people. I mean, just open arms.
Does that sort of speak to also though to the introduction in the community to newer people? Because there's people who have been playing board games a long time who maybe just started coming online and talking. And it seems like it is there's just a joy behind the industry and but behind games, and people just want to be able to say, yeah, let's talk about, you like talking about games, let's talk about games.
Right,
Like,
right.
That's at the heart of it for at least from my own unique experience, at least. That I can say. I mean, my own beginning with it comes from way back, but I have kids, much like yourselves. So I appreciate that. I really appreciate insight too, because that's not a perspective that I myself can have. So thank you for sharing that. I think it's important to hear. And I think the industry is learning and growing from that. Nathan, I got to ask you, from your community experience, was it been like for you just with, your first game?
Well, I mean, obviously I'm a white male, and so there's a lot of people in board games who look like me, but I will say one thing that kind of surprised me, obviously a very pleasant surprise, is I don't think that the board game design community is very competitive in an interesting way. Because you might think, obviously, every publisher only has a certain number of slots, and you might think, well, if that person's game gets picked up by that publisher, that's one less opportunity for me. And I don't think anybody thinks that way. Because I think any person who buys, like if someone buys Medium and maybe that's the first game they bought or whatever, I think no one buys one game and never buys another game, I don't think.
Right.
For example, like Medium came out about the same time as Wavelength, a fantastic party game and a very successful one. And I think the fact that those two games came out at the same time, I think that Wavelength's success only helped Medium. Like, we don't know those designers or anything, but I do think that like every board game designer that I've met anyway wants every other board game designer to be successful. And people, when we were getting started, people helped us out, and we've done what we could to pay it forward to other designers that we've met. But it's been very open, and I think that every game that gets published makes the world better for the next game that gets published. So non-competitive in a great way.
It's true, and I've had enough people on now. This is, I think, the 18th or 19th episode I've done, and I will just say, everyone has come on and mentioned another game or two from another publisher or another designer. And that speaks volumes as far as I'm concerned about. Not that people obviously want their game to do well, but they are not, they're certainly, they share the joy of again, games. And they all play different games. Jamie Stegmeyer the other day, I know, was having his usual live stream, and he was talking about other games that he likes to play. Certainly, yes, he plays his own games, but he doesn't just play his own games. He talks about the mechanics from all the other games he likes, even games he doesn't like. So, and that's how we learn, is what I like to think. We've been chatting a while here, and I appreciate all of your time tonight.
We can go on forever.
It's easy, right? We're talking about games, and we're talking about making games. I have to ask, though, from your experience and what you've learned over the course of this, and just to make it easy, we'll start with you, Danielle, and then have Nathan go. But what's the kind of the lesson you learned in the process of making game that you might, share with someone who's looking to do this? And maybe whether it's a party game or a big game, it is a process. And I know the advice is always appreciated, and I always like to make sure I get that from my guests, because I can tell you, I've had people write me, and I just want to share this really quick because I don't know if I share this all the time, but I've had people write me on the side and just literally send me an email and say, I really love the insights on kind of their process and their advice, because that helps me, because I'm thinking about that. So your words are heard. And I say this to you, and I say this to everyone else who's been on Creators Corner. So awesome. I thank you in advance for whatever advice you might offer to those people.
Okay. I think that my experience is a little bit different, because I do have Nathan as a partner. And I would say that I think you can have pros and cons of having a partner, but I think that the pro is that we are holding each other accountable and pushing each other. So I know this is not advice yet, but it's definitely going to be a different experience than somebody that is doing it on their own. And especially if you're doing a heavy strategy game and it's just you trying to figure something out and, getting stuck on one part. I think that could be super frustrating. So like having a partner is at least somebody you can bounce ideas off of. So I guess I'm kind of figuring this out as I speak, but like, I guess my piece of advice is to have somebody with you along the way that sort of understands, you know, I would say try not to keep your game in the dark. Try to bounce your ideas off of somebody or walk somebody through that game so that you have a different perspective than your own when you're kind of creating whatever game you're going to be creating. So yeah, have a partner of some sort, invite a friend over and just pitch it to them. Invite that one person that you know that's not going to say this is dumb. You know, invite that person that's going to listen to you and bring some creative insight and not shut your idea down right when you start pitching it to them. So I guess that would be my biggest piece of advice.
Yeah, my piece of advice was going to be have a partner.
Follow that up, pal.
I know. Well, mine was going to be have a partner, which is what you said, because I don't know how anybody does this by themselves, because it's so easy to like, you know, feel like you're hitting a dead end, or like you have this great idea, but then once you make a prototype and start playing, you're like, this sucks. This is not fun. I don't know why I thought it would be. You know what I mean? But like having someone that you always have someone you can play test with, someone who can always be like, yeah, that was dumb, but maybe this wouldn't be. Like it's so much easier to have someone to work with. But I mean, I guess I would say my advice is not to be too precious with your ideas. I think so many good ideas never see the light of day or never become published games because people doubted them, or people were afraid someone was going to steal them, or any number of other reasons. And maybe we're guilty of being too shamelessly self-promotional, but like I think the more you can talk to people about your ideas, the better they're going to be, and the more other people are going to share their ideas with you. And I think the best way to get good feedback is to give it to other people. And I think that when we first started in games, I think we thought like, well, who are we to tell other people what they can do and what they can't do? These people have published games. But I feel like if you care about games, or you care about like having social interactions with people, you have the pedigree to be able to weigh on other people's games. And so I think just get yourselves out there, whether it is on Twitter or on a Board Game Geek group or on a subreddit if you have to, or at Unpub. I mean, like the great thing about Unpub is that you can just go and play people's unpublished prototypes. I mean, you don't have to have a game of your own that you're pitching, and it's a great way to get part of the process and to meet people. And I think they used to have those events in cities all over the place, and I think they will again sometime soon. So I will say, I'll wrap up and just like Chris, sorry, but I do think that like the board game industry has a much lower barrier to entry than you think it does. You don't have to be a content creator like Chris. You don't have to have a design that you're pitching. I mean, there are people who are dying to have you play test their game. Just reach out, you'll find it.
I will also say there's a reason I like doing this. I would love to, maybe I'd like to do a game, but I love talking to people. So I gotta say thank you to both of you for joining me. Where can people learn more about what you're up to and connect with you? Share a little bit. Just I know you're both on. I know obviously you're on Twitter. There's a link for that. There will be a link for that. I'll make sure in the description. Any other place you recommend people find about what you're up to? Other than Board Game Geek, which obviously I would just say everyone go check out Medium on Board Game Geek and learn a little bit more about that game, obviously, and of course your announcement. Now they've got 2 games to look for.
Yeah. Well, I guess we could say, oh gosh, I feel like I'm like share, follow, but also buy Mediums at your local board game shop, hopefully, and it's on Amazon and it's at Target, Barnes & Noble. You can follow some Storm Chaser on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Nathan's our social media guy too. He does it all.
Well, I do. And every Wednesday we post a media. We call it the social medium, but it's just 2 cards that we post every Wednesday. People guess what they think the medium is, and we do it. And if you are at all interested in That Old Wallpaper, which we've got in its preliminary art form now, or in any of the other games that we're working on, our website is stormchasergames.com.
Oh yeah.
And we have we have videos of I think 6 games that. And if you are a publisher and wants to publish our game, please check it out. But
sorry, if you're not a publisher and you're just looking to start making your game, I feel like it might be a good resource into how we pitch our games or like what we make to help pitch the game. I feel like it might be a good resource.
Yeah, just message us. We're happy to talk to anybody. And I won't cut you off like I just did Chris.
I was gonna say I love that you show the process. So I would encourage people to go check that out. I always forget who coined it, but it's like fail up, that idea of like you keep putting it out there, and you've obviously eventually you find that success. And for at least for most people, you've both found it. I'm excited. I'm looking forward to seeing the next one come out 2022. Other than that, hopefully we'll be able to all see each other in person at some point very soon. Some cons are going to make it possible again. So we're getting there. We're getting there, and in-person gaming is much more of a reality these days. So I want to thank you though for chatting with me. Thank you so much. Appreciate the time tonight. Nathan, Danielle, please go check them out. Want to make a note as well. We will have more wonderful people coming on Creators Corner. If you have not been watching Creators Corner, it's your first time watching the show, we've had everyone from Jamie Stegmeyer, Shem Phillips. We have had Mike Trias, Daniel Lowe, a lot of great people.
Eric Slauson.
Yeah. We also had you mentioned it. Peter McPherson, Tiny Towns was on. Wonderful guy. So please come meet these people. They're wonderful people. And if you've got a recommendation, you've got someone you say, I'd love to hear this person's story, I want to know more about their process, let me know. I want to have them on Creators Corner. So other than that, I will just say on the 28th, it's going to be another episode of Is This Game For You? We're going to be talking about Santa Monica by AEG. Great, fantastic game that I love. But if that game is for you, you can find out when you tune in on 28th at 8:30. Anthony from Board Game Dads will be joining me, as he often does. And that's going to be 8:30 p.m. Eastern time, just to be clear. On that note, Nathan, Danielle, thank you so much for your time tonight. I appreciate it.
Chris, we have had a blast, and just once again, we're glad you're doing something and putting it out there. That's all we could ever ask for.
Thank you, Chris. My pleasure. This was great.
Thank you. And to everyone else who tuned in, whether you watched in, jumped in while this was live, or come in later, thank you for watching. And if you get a chance, give me a like and a subscribe. Appreciate that. Want to grow the channel. We do have a little bit of a thing going on that I do want to mention. I have essentially a loot up pack from Renegade Games Studios. I believe that I'm going to be giving away at some point, and a few other fun things. I may actually be giving away some Marvel Champion cards soon too. So stay tuned for Twitter, and I'll be announcing those. Other than that, have a wonderful night, everyone. And thank you for coming aboard and going behind the meeple to meet these amazing people. I will talk to all of you very soon.